Staying in Washington, Senator Mitch McConnell is in the hospital this morning. A spokesperson for the senator confirms the minority leader suffered a fall at the Waldorf Astoria hotel in Washington last night. He was admitted to a nearby hospital to receive treatment. NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ryan Nobles joins us now with the latest on his condition. Good morning, Ryan. So how serious was this fall? Do we have any updates on McConnell's condition this morning?
Yes, Zinkley, so far the only update that we've gotten this morning is that the senator is still recovering after that fall. And to answer your question as to how serious it was serious enough for him to spend the night in the hospital. No other details being released by his spokesperson right now. We do know that it came after a private dinner and after what was a pretty lengthy day here on Capitol Hill. Senate Republicans posting a rare win during this Congress, defeating, or I should say passing a bill that would nullify a controversial crime bill that was passed by the Washington, D.C. City Council. McConnell, of course, 81 years old. He's had health scares in the past, had heart surgery in 2003, suffered a fractured shoulder after a fall back in 2019. So this is something everyone's keeping a close eye on as to how soon it will be before he will be back here in the United States Senate. Zinkley.
And Ryan, you just talked about that 2019 fall McConnell had outside of his Louisville home. What was his recovery for that like?
He was back in action pretty shortly after that, Zinkley. He was walking around the Capitol for a significant period of time with his arm in a sling, but it didn't really hold him back very much at all from participating in the day-to-day machinations of the United States Senate. So even though he has had those health setbacks in the past, he has shown an amount of resiliency as it relates to that. And, you know, like many of his colleagues here in Washington, he is in his 80s, but is still a very active participant in the day-to-day activity happening here in Washington, and he may be the most important Republican senator in the United States Senate.
And Ryan, several members of the Senate have actually had absences recently due to illness. Democrats have a pretty narrow majority over Republicans, just 51 to 49. So do we know whether McConnell's absence will affect the scheduled votes?
Yeah, I don't think it will in the short term, Zinkley, and it's important to look at this in a short-term and long-term lens. You mentioned there are two Democratic senators right now that are not actively participating in votes on the Senate floor. John Fetterman of Pennsylvania, who's recovering from clinical depression. He's being treated at Walter Reed Hospital here in Washington. This after, of course, his stroke from last year. And Senator Dianne Feinstein is recovering at her home in California after being hospitalized for shingles. So it doesn't really impact the margins in terms of votes here in the United States Senate right now. The more long-term problem for Senate Republicans is just the outsized role that Mitch McConnell plays in these negotiations. The president is going to release his budget here today. McConnell will be a key negotiator during those talks. And then, of course, there's the looming debt ceiling issue, which Republicans in the House have threatened to use as a leverage point as part of these negotiations. McConnell often a calming presence during these negotiations, because even though he is a fiscal conservative, he tends to not want to mess with the credit rating of the United States. So if he's out for a long period of time, it could certainly play a role in all of those heated negotiations, which are expected here over the next couple of months.
Lots to watch, and we're sending McConnell well wishes for a speedy recovery. Ryan, thanks so much.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.